Hey guys, Shock here, and today I'm going to be reciting a CreepyPasta, something new. I'm not sure what I'll call this series, but you'll see once it is uploaded. Today for the CreepyPasta though, we have Luigi's Mansion beta disc. Yeah, alright, let's get started. Hello there. How much do you know about the game Luigi's Mansion? Better question, how much do you think you know about it? Have you ever looked up the beta version of the game? Well, I've always been fascinated with beta games. I know about them all. Super Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, Banjo-Kazooie, and many more. The changes they make from the beta versions to the final versions are quite significant. So recently, after playing Luigi's Mansion, I noticed that I had no dirt whatsoever on that game. So I looked up the beta and quickly fell in love with it. I have connections with gaming stuff, my best friend being a rare game collector, and my brother owning a game shop. I never actually thought about playing a beta game before, until I heard my friend got a copy of the Luigi's Mansion beta. No way, this can't be possible, I thought to myself. What are the odds that he could have gotten the unreleased ideas for the original Luigi's Mansion? Of course, with him being a collector, he focused more on having it in his possession rather than playing it. He knew about my love for the beta game, so he let me borrow the copy of it for a while. It was like a different game. So many things had changed between the beta and final version. I saw a clock where the Game Boy Horror was supposed to be. I knew about that feature and accepted the challenge. I also saw the overheat meter, so I couldn't use the poltergust for very long or else it would hurt Luigi. I was intrigued greatly by all these choices. The ghosts were different colors and the music was more 8-bit. I wasn't bothered at all. I loved it. After clearing through the first couple of rooms on the left hallway, everything went normally. It played fine, had a couple of overheating moments here and there, but nothing major. I went into Chauncey's room. I sucked up the last ghost, but in the process my poltergust overheated. God dang it! I shouted at the game. Further examining the situation, I noticed Luigi's head was a bit odd. I leaned in forward, looking at the back of his injured, pixelated head. There was a fatal-looking wound there. It was disgusting. The back of his head was blown completely off. Parts of his brain were visible, and each time I walked, you could see blood drip from the back of his head. It was like someone took a mace to the back of his head and smashed it violently. He dripped like a sink that was never turned off all the way. It was pretty freaky, I have to admit, but he still controlled normal. Everything was going along without any sort of change, so maybe it was a glitch. I continued on with my journey, as the back of Luigi's head dripped small drops of dark red blood. I went into the parlor, aiming to clear the rest of the rooms on the second floor. I walked in, and a lamp exploded. It made me jump, but I was aware of that add-on. The freaky thing was after the lamp exploded, Luigi screamed and covered his face for a brief moment. I spun him around to see what was wrong, and his face was cut. Little spouts of blood trickled down his cheeks, yet he didn't seem bothered. It spewed out as a little as if someone had turned on a water fountain of pure maroon-colored blood. Now I'm getting creeped out, but it was still very intriguing to me. I walked down the hallway that would be deemed as the beginning of Area 2. I saw a puff of cloud behind me, and then out shouted a ghost as Luigi was scared off his feet. He began to do a reverse crab walk across the floor in terror. Another concept I knew about it didn't feel so out of place. After Luigi arose from his cowering position, I walked to the basement area. Luigi walked down the first staircase, and then I tried activating the sliding ability, so he did. Luigi slid down the stairs, but landed on his feet with his ankles shattered on contact. A thunderous crack was heard. He screamed loudly and grabbed a hold of his leg, rocking back and forth. Odd, I said to myself, rather perplexed at the situation. He stopped holding his leg, and a cutscene triggered. The camera was focused on Luigi, with frontal view, and the stairs stood behind him. He slowly grabbed the rail and stood up. Then Luigi started mumbling to himself, "No, no, no, no!" The camera panned over to show an armada of ghosts in the corner. They all fled after turning to see Luigi screaming in disbelief and horror. From there, it unveiled the body of a very dead and rotting toad. The top of his head looked like a giant had taken a bite out of it. Maggots crawled through the freshly opened gap in his head. Half his face was missing. The left side and the flesh ripped off, showing just bare bone. His jaw was dislocated, and hung askew while his head leaned against the wall, unable to support its own weight. Clearly, he had been dead for quite some time. But what were the ghosts doing there? Feeding? It had bothered me, so I sat there, controller in my hand, with sweaty palms, and panting as heavily as if I had undergone a marathon. Should I go on, or should I just leave it alone? Sitting there, watching the cutscene that took only a couple minutes felt like hours. Just contemplating on what to do next felt like a psychotic idea. But I might not ever have a chance at this again, so I kept going. There was only one other place that I could think of that I hadn't been to yet, outside. Luigi was a mess. The bleeding had slowed down, as did his movements. The blood had only dripped every few seconds, rather than with each step. His foot was sideways, yet he walked normally, but slower, as if experiencing that thing we define as pain. Filled with curiosity, I figured it was one of those times where it's better not to ask questions. As I made it back to the foyer, I stared at Luigi. Again, his eyes sunk. His face looked as if it were melting plastic. I grabbed open the door to explore the outside world and look at what else was out there. Unfortunately, I couldn't get to walk more than 3 steps outside before a cutscene triggered. My fears had risen as I placed the controller in my lap and covered my mouth with my hands. My heart sped up, and I didn't know what to expect next. I knew the beta was scarier than the original, but I had never dreamt it would be this much more adrenaline-filled. Luigi opened his mouth in shock. The camera turned from a frontal view of Luigi over to Bowser, standing in front of a tree. Bowser had his back turned and then looked over his shoulder. He stood out of the way of a tree as it showed Mario torn to shreds, hung on a tree like a sick holiday decoration, an arm stuck through a branch, his torso sliced in half with all of his organs swept out lying on the floor. His head lay on top of like a star to a Christmas tree. The lightning flashed as it showed a more detailed image of Mario's face. His eyes were rolled in the back of his head, his mouth drenched with blood. His mustache had been ripped off like a band-aid, his skin hanging in pieces as if someone had dragged a cheese grater slowly across his face. That was it, though. The cutscene ended. Next thing I knew, Luigi is standing back where I left him, his hands grasping his head while looking down at the ground. If he squeezed any tighter, it looked as if it could pop. I glanced over at the Game Boy Horror, noticing the timer was speeding up drastically, and suddenly, my 24 hours were up. As the timer was up, the game over cut scene started, showing Luigi's lifeless face, the very same face that stays in your mind and haunts your dreams each night. The lightning flashed again, showing his dismantled face with a gash diagonally from his right eye to the left side of his mouth. It continued to play, but this time showing things from Luigi's point of view. Luigi looked down at his hands as they started to slowly go transparent and fade away. He grabbed the poltergust and thrust it off his body and placed it on the ground in front of him. A small tear rolled down Luigi's cheek as he held the nozzle directly at his face and hesitantly turned the poltergust on. He screamed loudly, and my speakers began to fill with static. He was slowly spiraling into the very device he fought the ghost with. The poltergust rocked back and forth, sucking in what was once its master, until he was completely engulfed inside the machine. The camera zoomed in on the device for a brief moment, and then a hand reached out and grabbed it. It was a frail old hand by none other than our friend, Professor Egad. He grinned violently with his baby tooth looking almost as sharp enough to cut through the flesh. He walked off with his great creation and all its captives. The screen went black and the sound went quiet. As the fading transition desisted, it showed a painting on the gallery wall, but a painting of none other than Luigi. Luigi was standing there holding his head down with his face looking half melted and blood-stained. Behind him was a crowd of ghosts reaching for him to get their revenge for now and the rest of eternity. I sat still too scared to move when suddenly I noticed something. A cloud of smoke was ascending from my GameCube. I panicked, stood up, and backed away. Within seconds, it burst into flames. I darted out of my seat and filled a glass with water to douse the burning hardware. The fire was extinguished, and the smoke filled my room. I walked over to open the windows and air the place out, then sat back in my chair. I leaned to grab the GameCube. I yanked it violently out of its place so the cord split. Not like it mattered anyway. It was broken. But when I opened the disc slot to search for the beta disc, it was vacant. I looked at the wreckage from what was once my GameCube, and it was completely empty. I peered in closely and saw the words Luigi's Mansion was burned in the disc slot. The next day, I met back up with my friend, the collector. I asked him where he had got the beta for Luigi's Mansion, but all he did was look at me puzzled and say, "What beta?" I spent countless hours trying to tell him what happened, but he didn't believe me. I tried showing him the words etched in my GameCube, but I couldn't find them. The GameCube was still a wreck, of course, but it was nothing more than overheated, worn out, ruins of an old Nintendo product. Well, I guess the old saying is true. Curiosity killed the cat. Or in this case, my GameCube. Well, I thought that was an excellent creepypasta. No Ben drowned ending, like where he is in your computer or anything, like none of that. Just a mystery, really. But I did like the way it ended. I liked the storyline a lot. How like his friend couldn't remember the beta, or even maybe it didn't even happen. Ooh. But yeah. I don't think this could have happened, but it is really cool because in the beta, apparently, some of those things were actually in the actual beta, like the poltergeist overheating and stuff. Not like Mario being like torn to shreds or anything, but like I thought that was really cool how it stuck to some of the facts of the beta, and it really provided a good creepypasta experience, better than some of the other ones that I've read. But tell me in the in the comment section below if you'd like to see more creepypastas or no, or should I just stick to something else. But yeah, leave a comment, leave a like if you liked the video, and subscribe for more content. Alright, thanks guys, see ya.